Before we get started, just a quick update for the podcasting community in academia and higher education. Higher Ed PodCon is in Cleveland in July this summer. And for year 2, we've expanded to 2 full days of sessions, conversations, and practical discussions focused entirely on podcasting in higher education. We have over 30 speakers lined up from the US, Canada, UK, and even Italy. I am really excited about the diversity of voices from a broad range of institutions speaking at PodCon this summer. We have our full list of sessions on the website. Early registration is still open. We've worked really hard to keep the cost of attending as reasonable as possible. Registration actually includes breakfast and lunch both days. And you'll see we've negotiated some super affordable hotel rates nearby. So please join us July 16th and 17th. You can learn more and register at higheredpodcon.com. higheredpodcon.com. Hope to see you there.
Podcasting, I like to call it the beauty and the beast of podcasting, in that anybody can do it. That's the beauty of it. That's also the beast of it. There is some terrible stuff out there, and we're trying to keep you in the beauty and not the beast. So for us, it's about creating a scaffold. It's about finding a way of creating something together. It's different to a journal article where it's insular. It's a collaborative, it's a project team. So I think that's something you should bear in mind when you think about your outputs is, what does a podcast bring out in my team that I can celebrate?
Welcome to Continuing Studies, a podcast for higher education podcasters who want to learn, connect, and get inspired. I'm Neil McPhedran, founder of higheredpods.com and the Podium Podcast Company.
And I'm Jennifer Lee, founder of JPod Creations. If you're podcasting in higher ed, you're not alone. There's a fast-growing community out there, and we're here to help you tap into it.
Right. We want to hear your ideas, so send us subjects you think we should tackle, corners of the higher education podcasting space that we're not getting into, people to interview. We got our email in our show notes. We'd love to hear from you. So Jen, in this episode, we are chatting with Krissie Brighty-Glover, who is Director of Training at Research Podcasts, which is in the UK. Krissie's company is awesome. They focus on producing podcasts for universities and researchers, and her team works directly with academics and institutions to turn research into audio, which is actually quite interesting, often funded through public engagement or research impact grants, and they actually help academic podcasters get those grants too, which is great. And so through this work, she's had this front row view into how universities are adopting podcasting as a medium for research communication.
Yeah, I'm really excited for you to hear from her because she is super great, a resource of knowledge. You and I both got to meet her in person too, so it was nice to actually talk to someone face-to-face that we interview on the podcast.
This is actually part 2 of a special 3-part series where we're doing a deeper dive into exploring research podcasting. So the first episode was a couple of weeks ago. Go back and listen to that one. That was the one with Professor Abigail Harrison-Moore from the University of Leeds. And we went deep into her participatory research, which was really good. And Krissie helped her bring that to life. And then part 3 of this mini series is going to be later in the summer. And it's actually from a in-person recording that I did with Abigail, Krissie, and then Kerr Hunter. And he runs the Helix studio at the University of Leeds. And I recorded that, unfortunately, without you, Jen, because you were here in Vancouver. So it would have been like 2 a.m. for you. I recorded that in the actual Helix studio while I was there for the ePod conference. So that'll be part 3. Be sure to go back and listen to that first one with Abigail. But otherwise, let's get into this super interesting conversation with Krissie. Welcome, Krissie. It's great to have you here on the Continuing Studies podcast.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. It's really exciting to talk to other people in a community of researchers and podcasters that are in this field and to bring that community together. So thank you for having me along.
Excellent. So Research Podcast has been producing academic podcasts for more than a decade. You and your colleagues there are definitely OGs. And you work with universities across the UK and Europe. So let's start off by telling us a bit about Research Podcasts. What does your company actually do for universities and researchers?
So we like to consider ourselves early adopters. That would be me and my co-founder, Christine Garrington. I've worked in university communications for quite a long time and then realised that podcasting is something that we're really passionate about and really want to jump feet first into. So just after COVID, we really launched research podcasts, and our whole remit is to help researchers create podcasts. And it's part of the public engagement and impact agenda here. And to do that, we do end-to-end production. So what that means is we will do the ideology at the beginning. So where we think about the purpose, why you're doing the podcast, and then part of that we'll look at the format, the tone, the content, what you want to bring to the table. And then us as broadcasters will kind of create a narrative for you, storytelling, scripting to make your research more engaging to a wider audience. And then from there, we'll go on to guest booking, recording, editing, mastering, and then finally distribution. So my area of expertise personally is the distribution side. So dealing at the podcast artwork, transcripts, show notes, and adding a version of academic rigor to that as well. For us, everything we do is purposeful and with intent. So when we create transcripts, it's for accessibility, but it's also so your work is more referenceable and it adds that academic rigor to what you're doing. And I'm blessed because I lead a team of experts, and our real USB is that everyone that I work with gets the higher education context. So they're either ex-comms people or they've worked for the BBC and are now academic journalists. And the reason that's so important for me is that I want to understand the context that you're operating in. So here, the higher education sector in the UK, things are challenging at the moment. So from a finance perspective, from the sorts of things that people are allowed to study, talk about, there are challenges going on. So if you employed a production company that deal with commercial clients, they're not as involved, they're not as immersed in what you're trying to achieve. So I think that's where we're slightly different. And it also gives you a bit of leeway as a researcher as well, that we understand where you're coming from. So we start on the same page. So when we move forward, we're moving forward with purpose.
Krissie, you were saying, and same thing here in Canada right now, it's very hard when it comes to funding. Lots of things are being cut. And it's a big challenge, but I know that you guys are kind of helping fund different academic projects. Can you tell a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course. So we don't personally fund the academic projects. We get two types of researcher that will come to us. The first type is somebody right at the beginning of their idea in their research, not just a podcast. And what they want to do is bring the podcast into their funding model, into their funding application. So we would fall under the impact side. It's the same place that you may try and get funding for a conference, for example, or for a focus group or an outreach. So the podcast falls into that section. And they'll come talk to us and we'll help come up with their idea for them, give them the right language to put into their applications. And then they go away, put the application in. We have maybe 4 or 5 at any one time ongoing. And then, as you know, university sector finance funding, that can take years to come back. So that's part of, I guess, the pro of working with us is that we understand that, whereas other production companies would want beginning to end really quickly. The other type, and this happened really recently, so like we had a research project come to us, the Sustainable School Leadership Team, in November of last year, and they had a pot of funding left at the end of their project that was squirreled away for impact, but they hadn't quite worked out what to do with it, but it had to get spent soon because the project was ending. So they came and spoke to us, and we came up together with an idea of, let's get this podcast out alongside the project so you can really push engagement in a different way. They're looking outwards and they're bringing the people you're doing the research with along for the ride with you. And that's really important. So it's not just, we don't do research on, we do research with. And there's a key distinction there, I think.
That funding part is unique. I think the other part that struck me that is quite unique about what you're doing is the training side of things. I think Jen and I have done some of that, but that training of the researchers is, I find, super interesting. What is some of the training that you do with some of these researchers? I presume some of them come to you with zero experience at all. So they're starting from scratch, but you're director of training, actually. It's in your job title. So maybe you can sort of dig into that a little bit more for us.
Of course I can. That's actually how I started at RP. So for me, I have an academic background. I'm actually a historian by trade. Anyone who knows me knows I'm a massive geek. And that's the best part of this job is that I get to learn new things with people all the time. Like just this week, I'm learning about supply chains all the way through to young carers and school leadership. It's wide and I love it. And part of that comes in the training as well. So our general model is that universities or research projects will reach out to us And there's one of two ways they'll go. If it's a research project that's got an idea but doesn't have the funding to take us on as production support, we'll pull together what we call our Launch Your Podcast workshop. And in that, we'll talk you through kind of your idea, do a little bit of editing, some market research, see what else is out there, where your idea fits within that. The idea that there's loads of podcasts. Where's my podcast going to fit? There's loads of TV shows. People are still making them. There's loads of books. People are still writing monographs. I don't think that should stop you in your kind of process. And then we talk about kit, equipment, and host, kind of demystifying how you get your recording onto podcast apps. So that's one way to do it. And then we'll kind of hang around and mentor them through the project. So we've got quite a few of those that are ongoing. The other version is that a university will reach out to us as part of their training. So whether that is doctoral training partnerships that we have here, which are collections of universities that come together and they provide funding for PhD students to do training. And we would just come in as part of that, part of the public engagement side normally. Or it's university departments. So the way that that workshop works is that you come in as an individual person with your own idea. And we'll talk you through what it takes to get from idea to distribution and what we'll find on the way through. So whether that's with PhD students or early career researchers, is some people absolutely adore the editing side and the audio side, and they're all in. Some people absolutely hate that part, the mechanics part of it. And those that hate the mechanics part of it, we're always like, there are other ways around it. There's AI platforms like Descript to help you with that. Or you can, with your limited funding budget, go and pay just an editor to do that bit. So it's about painting the picture of what it takes to get a podcast out. And it's more than audio, as you both know. But once you've got that, what can you do yourself and what can somebody else take off your plate? We find, we did a production Global Aid Rethink out of Royal Holloway that was funded by the Social Science Impact Accelerator. And at the end of the project, the researcher said to us, we've never had so much support creating an output before. We didn't expect that. We thought we would have to do everything. You don't. When you get a production company on board or when you get support from a centralized service, they can take some of the pressures off you. So whether that is the editing or the scripting, or the thing that takes us the most time, if I'm honest, is guest booking. Like managing calendars is really difficult. And a researcher is time poor. So if you can get funding, you can invest in people like us to take that pressure off you, and you just turn up to the recording and you do your thing. If you want to, we can even present for you as well. We do that for a lot of productions as well. But I think that's the beauty of employing somebody in, is it just takes that time for you.
My favorite thing when I'm talking to people about helping them with their podcasts, they're like, I just can do it all myself, or I can get AI to do it. And I'm like, okay, go ahead. Because they don't realize how much time and work it is. And I said, we can help take something off your plate, but I don't advise you doing the whole thing.
I completely agree. Podcasting's not hard. It's really not. It's not difficult. It is time consuming. That is the key problem. So for us, the people we work with don't have time. So that's why you get people to do it. So that's why we're
very good point.
I love that there's easier tools to use to edit, but this is where expertise like you guys come in, help people learn how to use these tools properly. Because a lot of people are like, I'll use this tool and it will be easier and I won't have to pay an editor. And then you listen to it and it's like, well, that's crappy.
I completely agree. We're all about making you sound the best version of you. So we do like a presenter training as well. That's kind of another add-on that we do. But my colleague who delivers that training does a lot of media training as well. And she'll talk about your presenter is 125% of you. And that extra 25% is what we're trying to add on, but the 100% is you. So we're not trying to change who you are. So when you then start using AI editors, they do change who you are. They do clip you and you get those awful like popping sounds that are really frustrating. But we try to be as gentle with editing as possible, and that we're trying to make you the best version of you as you can. And that's what you get with a skilled editor.
Yeah. A lot of people think that AI is like an easy fix and solution. And it's great. It's a great colleague. It's your coworker. You're not making the poor little AI do all the work.
Oh, completely. And like every time we come across a new AI product, sometimes we get really excited about it. And then you go and use it and you're like, it doesn't quite work in my context. So yeah, it is trial and error. And that's part of our training. And we say that right at the top. We are only going to teach you what we do. So throughout today, this is a learned experience. So we will tell you about the challenges. Podcasting, I like to call it the beauty and the beast of podcasting, in that anybody can do it. That's the beauty of it. That's also the beast of it. There is some terrible stuff out there. And we're trying to keep you in the beauty and not the beast.
Oh, I like that. I think we've come up with our title for this episode there.
Well, as long as Disney doesn't
I
sue
love
us.
that.
Yeah, that's good. I wanted to ask, like, how many researchers show up to your training or at the beginning? and they're actually regular podcast listeners versus not regular podcast listeners, anecdotally on my end. We get these, well, we're interested in doing a podcast because all of our colleagues are doing a podcast. Well, do you listen to podcasts? Well, no, not really. So I guess there's probably an application there as well.
So we've been doing the workshop for quite a long time. And at the beginning, we would have people turn up that had never even heard of the word podcast. And it always amazed me because I was like, how have you signed up to a 10 till 4 course, not even really knowing what it was, to be honest? That was kind of joyful in that we'd have that all the way through to people that already had a podcast on the same workshop. So it was about kind of pulling those ideas apart. But for us, right at the beginning, we literally get the Oxford English Dictionary of what a podcast is, and we talk about it. Because for us, the definition is changing all the time. We know it is with the introduction of video as well. The amount of times people will stop and say to me, what is the difference between a video podcast and a chat show? And I don't know the answer to that, if truth be told. And sometimes I wonder if it even matters. But by giving that definition at the top, we can then pull that apart across the day and have conversations about why academics should be using this medium. And this is what this medium means. But by the time you get someone who comes to you with production, they've got that slightly different angle in that some of their peers don't think it's academically rigorous enough. And it's about getting that monkey off their back and being like, actually, I want to do this because there is an academic point to why I'm doing this. And there is a real engagement part of that. One of my favourite types of podcasts at the moment are co-creation or participatory action research podcasts. So for us, co-creation is probably the best way to explain it. So it's about creating podcasts with the people you're researching with. And the point was that the researcher behind it has done loads of research on young carers, but we want to elevate their voices because they're the more important thing. So we got them on, they decided what they wanted to talk about, and we provided a scaffold for that. It's actually a really successful way of getting people's voices and elevating voices and allowing people to tell their stories. And it still be considered research and academia and really kind of pull down those traditional ivory towers. And I think participatory action research and co-creation is really key to that. And I'd love to do more of that. So if there's anyone listening that is interested in that, definitely reach out to me.
So instead of it being the academic and they're the host, it's more of a collaboration. You're bringing in someone else who maybe has a little bit more experience on the mic and you're kind of pulling all that research and story out of that academic.
So actually it's more the reverse. Like, we take a step back. So what tends to happen is that we walk into these rooms with people that the research is being done on. So they may be vulnerable people, they may not be. It's a whole remit of different people, depends what the research is. And you sit down with them and you have these ideas of like what you want to talk about, how you want to talk about it. But then you sit down with them and they go, that's not how we do it. That's not what we want to talk about. And then all your ideas have to change. So for us, it's about creating a scaffold, building in flexibility and trusting that the people that you're working with, we can get there in the end. So it's about finding a way of creating something together. And I think podcasting is so great for that because if you have people in your team that aren't comfortable behind a microphone, they can still have a role in this. If you've got a research project where you've got a really great speaker, you've got someone who's creative, you've got someone who's got great ideas, someone who's quite a good storyteller, you can all get involved in a podcast. It's different to a journal article where it's insular, it's a collaborative, it's a project team. So I think that's something you should bear in mind when you think about your outputs is, what does a podcast bring out in my team that I can celebrate?
That's good. I like that. You know, there's so many different ways to output and to approach it. And I think sometimes we get stuck in this rut of interviewing.
And like for us, our sweet spot really, our most common production is to have a researcher and then someone living that experience together. So yes, it is an interview format, but you pull the research off the page because I want someone who lives that experience. Because I think that really helps because the world that we live in is quite niche. So listening figures are not huge. When we talk about impact, it's not just about who's listening and the numbers, it's about why they're listening. And part of that is about the guests you have with you. So don't just think of the podcast as the output. It's also part of the methodology. It's a part of your way to get networking, right? You can't get better public engagement than that. You're already bridging that gap really early on.
For me, listenership, it can't be the focus of your podcast. And too many people think about how many listens. And I'm like, even if you're getting 50 or 100 constantly, that is somebody listening to you and you are an expert.
Absolutely. And I actually was talking to a researcher yesterday, a woman called Candida, who's amazing. Her project is called Rape on Trial. And she purposefully designs it so she filters people out. It's intentional. So her beginning is longer than a normal podcast intro would be. And she's offering trigger warnings, and she really wants those who invest and listen to know what they're investing in. So she's intentionally creating a product where she's filtering out people she doesn't want to listen, which I thought was really enlightening to me. I was like, I hadn't thought about that way. We spend so much time thinking about get people to listen.
Yeah. Grow the audience.
Right. But now it's like, get the right people to listen, create that community. So we say all the time in training, I don't want 1,000 people to listen and do nothing with it. I'd rather 50 people listened and did something with it.
I think the other lens to put on it is if this was research, so if the output is a podcast, if the output would have been a monograph and you would have been ecstatic to have 15 people read it. Imagine if you had 30 people listen to your podcast. 30 people doesn't feel like much, but wow, when you put it up against who might read the output, it feels amazing. So it's another kind of way to look.
And like when you write a monograph, you don't think you're writing a Times bestseller, do you? Like, I'm not going to get on the top 10 bestseller list. Right. Unlikely. It's the same with a podcast. So this is what we face more in the training rather than production. It's that idea of, okay, where am I going to sit on these lists? And for us, it's about targeting the right audience, not a massive audience.
So you've worked with a number of institutions, as we sort of said off the top, some quite known names like Oxford. What are some of the bigger differences you see in how universities are structuring and managing podcasts? Some universities centralize podcasting through their comms teams, while others kind of let academics run with their own shows. What are some of the pros and the cons or approaches that you're seeing working closely with these universities?
So the way our business model works is that the researcher tends to be the person who reaches out to us first. And then we get introduced to comms teams if the researcher wants to. And they don't always, because as soon as you're in touch with a comms team, the comms team then have kind of some say over the content. So I was thinking about this recently, about peer review of podcasting. That's a really hot topic, isn't it? But when you start bringing in peer review and the academic rigor, you lose a little bit of the joy and the control you have. So even on just like a logistical thing, I create the artwork. We tend to put the university logos on the artwork because it just adds that authenticity. If I see something that says migration, conflict and crisis from LSE, I'm probably more likely to click on it with the LSE logo than I'm not, because there's an added rigor to it, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. So as soon as you do that though, you need to then abide by all their rules. And then as soon as you enter that world, it's really hard to get out of it. So if you've got a small project, they tend not to go down the comms route. They try and avoid it because they can keep control. However, if I've got a bigger project, and quite a few universities now, so with the hosting setup, it's a subscription service that you have to pay for. And the funding model here is a beginning and end for us. We work on a project basis. So if I go to a funder and say, you've got to pay a subscription forever and ever and ever more, they don't want to do it because it doesn't work with a funding model. So universities are waking up to that and they're centralizing. So they don't have to pay 100 different subscriptions. They pay one centralized one. And the universities I know that do it really well, UCL, Leeds and Oxford, all three of them do a really good job of doing that. They all do different hosting setups, but they all use the same sort of idea. Academics create their podcasts, either using us or doing it on their own, or using skills that are in-house, their own comms teams within their departments, and then they submit it to a centralized team. But when you're working in a bigger machine, things take longer. So we say that a lot to researchers. So some of them want to launch things around, say, a big conference coming up. You need to work backwards and factor in those times. But the big benefit of using a centralized system, other than just the cost, is that when people search for UCL or Oxford, you're in that search. So standing out is really important. So we actually encourage anybody that's got a centralized system to use it. We also encourage them to have a look around to see if they've got recording situations there as well. So a lot of universities now have podcast booth setups in the UK. We say this to researchers all the time. Don't spend money booking studios. You don't need to do that. Have a look around. But I would encourage any university comms team listening to this, start centralizing your podcasts, because you are wasting money allowing your researchers to do it individually.
Plus, you can have a little bit of control there. You would know more than me, but just sort of from an outsider looking into Oxford, the Oxford logo and where it is. And there is some rigor there around the brand.
And what Oxford do is incredibly intentional. So their artwork is intended to be that way. And to be honest, they don't add too much control. So we do the Centre for Personalised Medicine podcast for them. And it's all about the ethics behind genomic testing. You've got to bring the story with that, because genomic testing sounds really abstract. But when you start talking about how this affects people day to day in everybody's lives, it's a lot more interesting. And you can really see what the research is about. But we just edit that podcast for them. We send it back to them at the team, and then they send it to the centralized system. So there's not that much control there. Whereas UCL, you have to have transcripts. They won't allow it not to have a transcript. Leads allow you to access the system yourself. So we have access to Leads' system to upload ourselves. But every university is different, and it will only take an email if you're a researcher to find out what your system.
Yeah. I think your advice, though, to comms departments is very sound.
But centralizing the
So,
production
I think
too
that's
and
good.
stuff, it helps because then they all sound similar and they don't sound like you have a different brand going on either. Do you believe in networks, or do you think that it's better for podcasts to kind of just individually be out there?
Question. I'm a fan of the centralized, I think, for findability. So we have lots of projects that are niche, and I love them for what they are, and I wish more people would listen to them. But they're hard to find because there's other things in their field. So I don't know, the sustainable school leadership, for example. If you write school leadership into Spotify in the UK, you're going to get 3 or 4 different ones above that one. Whereas if you just happen to be looking at University of Nottingham, say you're thinking of applying, you might stumble across this podcast in a way that you wouldn't otherwise. So I like the thought of centralizing for findability. If you are talking about a sensitive topic, I can see why you wouldn't want to do it, because you have to match brand ideology, brand guidelines. And there's some things that universities will not touch.
Are there many edgy podcasts when it comes to higher education podcasts?
Do you know what? Not really. The reality of you saying something near the mark is quite unusual. It's very rare that we have something flagged. It doesn't happen that often. So yeah, I would go centralized.
Well, maybe we'll just sort of end with a little bit of closing advice for researchers then. So if you're a researcher listening to this episode and thinking about starting a podcast, what advice would you give?
I think Krissie already answered it. You should just hire Krissie and her team.
Oh, yeah, we'll do it. We'll do it for you.
Okay.
Have we ever told someone no? No, we've reworked ideas many times, but we've never gone for flat no, if I'm honest. But
It would be against the business model.
although part of our business, it wouldn't be good for us either to put something subpar out. So we wouldn't put something out we didn't believe in. Like, we really believe in the productions that we have. I think the thing that people always do is they'll come to us and their first question is, what equipment should I buy? That's not the first question. So if I can give any advice to a researcher, is know why you want to do it. Know what your purpose is. Once you know what your purpose is, every decision you make after that will just fall in line with that purpose. So right at the beginning, we want you to get hold of your mission statement. Why are you doing it? And you can be honest with yourself as well. So is it that your purpose is to elevate voices? So then you can deviate from normal academic language and be comfortable with that. I'm not trying to talk to that audience. Or is it that your research wants to create real meaningful change? Well, if I want to do that, I probably need to get a change maker, someone who's got the power to make those decisions, onto the podcast with me. Knowing your purpose will change the direction from the beginning to the end, and it will keep you going to the end as well. Like, as much as I've said all the way through, podcasting isn't hard. It's not. It's time consuming. And if you don't have a purpose,
Agreed.
you will just stop.
Because it's a long slug and you have to do it because you want to do it and you're passionate about it. And there's other opportunities that people don't realize.
Like, what I always say in training is that this podcast is not going to replace traditional academic outputs. I'm not saying to you, don't write your monograph, create a podcast. What I'm saying to you is create a podcast in addition. And I know that is a lot because academics are juggling 100 things at once, but it's really worth it.
Well, I think that's a good spot for us to close out. Thank you so much, Krissie. There was some really good nuggets in there, and I'm looking forward to collaborating in the future. Well, Jen, another fabulous episode, and what a great carry on from that other episode we did with Abigail a few weeks ago.
I'm excited for your part 3 with them that you did live. But it was really interesting in this interview because it's something you and I chat about a lot is what is a listen and what is the value of it? Because I think a lot of people discount the listens and they just focus on the whole number being like thousands, millions. But it's like, it's not worth anything if they're not doing anything or continuing to listen. And the whole training aspect, I really found fascinating because I do a little bit of training, but like actually helping clients basically figure out how to start a podcast. And you're kind of like their coach. So they don't have to pay you for the full gamut, but then they pay for you to coach them through it.
Yeah. And not just that, but larger training sessions. So not necessarily just for an individual researcher who is looking to get into podcasting, but these larger kind of seminars and whatnot too. The other sort of key takeaway was about encouraging universities to centralize podcasting in our other worlds, in our day jobs, if you will, talking with and working with other universities and institutions. We definitely are pushing towards that. But I thought that was some really good insight from Krissie, just in that centralizing of the podcast infrastructure, rather than leaving every individual project to figure it out independently. I think we get caught up in this. We need to have a podcast and it should be every second week. And it's like, keep going and do this. But it could be like the British television shows. There's 6 episodes. That's what I like about them. You're in and you're out. That's it. There's such an opportunity in podcasting, especially academic podcasting, for that just sort of definable mini series. It's around a research topic. And if you don't have that central organization for support, it's really hard.
And they're not scared to kill the main character off in their TV shows either. They just keep going with people that make it interesting. And universities can learn from that as well. Sometimes people come and work with the university and they're doing it while they might be studying something as well. And then they leave and a new person has to come in and still be lovable. So there's a lot of things that we can take away from those Brits.
That's right.
Thank you for tuning into the Continuing Studies podcast, a podcast for higher education podcasters. We hope you found this episode informative and inspiring. If you enjoyed the show, we encourage you to follow and subscribe to our podcast on your preferred platform, so you'll never miss an episode. But if you found this episode particularly valuable, please consider sharing it with your friends and colleagues who also might be interested in higher education podcasts. We also invite you to join your peers on higheredpods.com, where you can connect with other podcasters in higher education and learn from others in the field. Thank you for being part of our community. We look forward to continuing to bring you valuable insights and conversations around higher education podcasts. See you in the next episode.